Welcome back. If you joined us for part one, I'm so glad you're here for part two. And if you're just jumping in, you may want to go back and start there. Either way, let's dive in. So it's more about focusing about where you're at right now versus what's ahead or what's behind.
Correct, correct. So I'll give you my example. So I've gone through a bit of a transition in my business the past 12 months, and I was stuck, and I was stuck with business development. So I'll call it for what it was. And I was resisting certain parts of business development. And I called it and I said, I was open and honest with myself. I observed myself. I didn't want to admit it. I observed myself and I said, okay, where in that bucket of business development that you've just said you are resisting, is there an opening? Is there an opportunity that maybe there are certain parts of that business development that you choose not to do, but whereabouts in that bucket is there an opening for you to become a newer version of yourself and for you to look at a newer version of business development? And it was my podcast that I started last year on my own. So that podcast that I did on my own, I could have waited another 6 months and waited for other people to join, but I took the bull by the horns, and that was momentum. Now, momentum is not on the timeline. Momentum is going vertical.
Mm.
Does that make? And I
Yeah,
became a bigger and better version of myself, and it spun me into a new world. Now I met new people. I've now written a book. I've spoken in Africa, all as a result of me doing that podcast.
yeah. I
Does that
think
make sense?
absolutely. I think one of the things that's so impressive about you and about really other people that meet or um, come to know that are very successful is they don't get stuck before the momentum. They may get stuck a little bit before the momentum, but they allow themselves to go with the momentum, because I think that's the scary part. It's like if it's not perfect, if I'm unsure of what that, like for you, you're saying, your podcast, it was like that's the unknown. You know what you've done before, but this new thing is scary and it's easy to get stuck before you hit that momentum. And I think that's why you've been successful, is because you've jumped into the momentum and let it go.
Jumped into that part of it, but now here's the thing. We still rubber band back to the timeline because we're human. So I've still rubber banded back. So we've got to remember we're still going to rubber band back to the timeline. So I still, even though I have done that, I am now back to, okay, I have not done the podcast for 2 months. I am going to have to kickstart this again. And so I'm back to the timeline, but the secret is to keep going into the gap, leaning into the new resistance, go into the gap, return, go into the gap, and it becomes quicker and quicker and quicker, so that you're living in momentum more and more and more. You're not relying on external influences as much. You're leaning in more on your own self-trust, more
Yeah,
and more.
I really like that, because I think the other thing is, so you had the initial momentum and things kicked off, and then you were human and you went back and there was a break. And a lot of people also get stuck in that because, oh shit, it wasn't
Yeah,
perfect.
yes,
I had a break. Oh, how could I possibly start again? And they let
yeah.
that stress or that fear paralyze
Exactly,
them.
exactly. And it can be anything. The thing it's kind of like the flywheel, I guess. And it's just knowing that that's okay. And just keep going from the timeline into the gap. And it really is about leaning into whatever that resistance is, and knowing that if you want momentum, because we blame so much on time, haven't got time. You know, we do. Time is just a construct. You know, time is just a clock that says you've got to be at a meeting at 9 o'clock. Outside of that, there is no time. It's like momentum. Let's create momentum. So, you know, this is my way of kind of making sure that I get back on the horse over and over and over again. So, yeah.
What I was going to say is, you know, I mentioned, you know, the jumping into that momentum, and you've had a lot of success, and you've worked with a lot of successful people. You've worked with CEOs, you've worked with Harvard MBA students, global companies. What do you think is a pattern for somebody that's like, okay, tell me the secrets. What are the high performers doing? So what do you see as a pattern across high performers that most people never notice? Have you noticed one? Is there one? And maybe it is
Yeah.
jumping into the momentum. I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, yes, I think definitely standards come into play. They have standards, and you know they maintain those standards, whether those standards are health, whether those standards are you know, the way they treat people, decisions, being very decisive. You know, and I actually, you know, I think when I'm thinking about different people, they're actually kind.
and
You know,
that's good news. This is
nice
good news.
people. They're actually really nice people, and there's that sustainability. Charisma will get you so far, and that's what I've noticed is there's charismatic leaders out there, but charisma is not influence. You know, those leaders can kind of come and go, and nothing much changes. Um, but yeah, I think they just care about their people.
I love
Um,
that. I love that
yeah,
that it comes. I love that what you're saying is it comes down to that, because I think
yeah.
especially in the day and age we're in right now, sometimes it can get really heavy, and it can feel overwhelming, and it's like, wow, like what you're saying is like, oh, that's kind of refreshing, you know, just to hear something good. Like that's what I'm seeing. That's the patterning I'm seeing. Okay, so you gave me a plug of my It's Not That Serious, Mike. I love that so much. I want you to be able to plug what you're doing. What is Bernadette building now? So you have a new book coming out, Becoming a Sales Leader of Influence, and that's also tied to the podcast you mentioned. What conversation are you hoping this book and the podcast in general will start that isn't happening yet in the leadership world?
Yes, well, I've just sent it off to the publisher this morning, so
Yay!
I mean, it was just an idea, you know, a couple of weeks ago. So, um, and you know, what it's really about is it's combining strategy, story, and the human spirit,
Oh, I love it.
and uh, and and it's a journey. It's my journey. So that the tagline is 40 years, 5 choices, 1 truth.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's different. So it's bringing together the sales leader of influence, um, I guess, framework, for want of a better word. And you know, I want leaders to realize that, or sales leaders anyway, it could be any leader, I guess, really, but sales leaders to realize that, you know, like a Russian doll, if you can picture the Russian doll, a true leader of influence um, carries 5 states, or carries 5 choices, or, you know, they are a manager of self. Number 1 is at the core, how you manage yourself, and what you protect and what you trade for those protections is key. You are a motivator of others. And so motivate means, you know, understanding what someone's motive for action is. That's what motivate means. And so how do you make decisions? How do other people make decisions? How do your team make decisions? And how do they go out to the market, understanding how buyers make decisions and how your buyers are motivated to make decisions? So that's the second kind of layer, if you like. The third layer is the leader must be a mentor of the team, which means that you are not the hero. And a lot of leaders today come in because they have been the successful person, and they bring that heroic state with them. And that kind of doesn't allow the team to develop to the best that the team can. So the team are the hero. That's their journey that they're on, and you're the mentor. If you were to kind of take Joseph Campbell's hero's journey into consideration. The fourth layer is where you actually mobilize the business, and this is where your ability to coach not just the deal, but actually coach the beliefs and behavior of the team, and really disrupt how their patterns show and know how to do that. And that's where I bring out the psychology and bring that part of my journey into play. And then the fifth layer, the outer layer, is where you really learn how to market your influence and influence your market by multiplying your influence out there. And that is through strategy, story, and the human spirit. And so whether that's through speaking or through frameworks or through story. So I kind of bring all my genius into this thing, and that sounds great. And we tend to think, okay, if I see some kind of a ladder structure or something, it's I've got to go through each of those layers. No, you are already those 5. A good leader is already those 5, but under pressure. And this is where it's like in uncertainty and under pressure, you actually drop. You actually lose layers. And so the book is how do you maintain those layers? And so my journey shares how you hold on to each of those layers under pressure.
I love the visual of that. I think it's also from a teaching perspective, helping your students, helping these amazing leaders remember the 5 pieces and the 5 layers, and thinking of it like the Russian doll. I had those growing up. I love that visual. That's a great way for you to teach this valuable insight that you're sharing. I love that.
Yeah. So as we go through, so much uncertainty and leaders are trying to navigate that, and they're kind of thinking inside their head is like, how do I maintain my, kind of top talent? How do I hang on to the top talent? How do I make my numbers? How do I keep my credibility? How do I, because there's so much risk, revenue risk, pipeline risk, credibility risk, all of that. How do I reduce all of that risk? And this is what the book is all about. And it's through my journey, over the 40 years and the different phases that I've gone through, and been quite open about how I've navigated through them as well. So, yeah.
Love it. And just for anybody listening, we will have all of the information in the show notes and everything like that. So I'm taking good notes on the books you're recommending, Bernadette. So I'm going to make sure those are also in the show notes, as well as all the information of where we can find your book, where we can hear your podcast, and all that good stuff, all that good information. Okay, definitely. This is the fun teaser from earlier. Okay, so we got your information on what's coming up in your life, what's coming out, all of your good stuff. But let's get some fun in there too. So you walked the Camino solo and ziplined from Zambia to Zimbabwe. I mean, folks, she is a wild woman. She is like no fear. Speaking of jumping into, momentum. So please tell us about those experiences. And if you can even measure it, I don't know if you can, but which one changed you more? What did it teach you about yourself? Both of those in extreme.
Yeah. One was just before COVID. So the Camino, which was, I don't know if here's something, a resource for your listeners. There's a movie with Emilio Estevez and what's his dad's name? Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
Yeah, called The Way. And I had watched that years ago, And I'd said to my husband, oh man, I'd love to walk that Camino. And
Well, wait, just for reference, for anybody that doesn't know that's listening, what is the Camino?
exactly. So it is a walk that you can do through France or through France to Spain, into Spain, or from Portugal to Spain, and you end up at this cathedral and in Spain. So it's a pilgrimage that they did hundreds and maybe thousands of years ago, which has now become a pretty big global kind of walk thing that you do, a pilgrimage thing. Anyway, I saw this movie and I thought, oh, I fell in love with the movie, so watch the movie. And anyway, so a couple of years after that, I think I was referenced again, and my husband said, well, I'm going to come with you. And he's not a walker. I love walking. And I said, well, why are you going to come? He said, well, someone's got to look after you. And I said, buddy, you ain't coming with me.
I think I'll look out for
Anyway,
myself.
it was never going to happen because Portugal from Australia. And anyway, just before COVID, I had a speaking engagement in New York and another one in Boston. And they were 2 weeks apart. And it was too long a gap to kind of sleep on someone's couch and too expensive. And so I got on the internet and I thought, Portugal's not far from New York.
Well, when you're coming from Australia, this is accurate.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I did this itinerary and I figured it all out, and I went to Tim and I said, hey, anyway, he's gone, okay, yeah, okay, if you're happy with that, fine. And just double checking you ain't coming with me.
And
Anyway,
P.S., you're not invited.
it was all good. So, yeah, so I left my suitcase in with one of my friends in Boston. And I had a 7.5 kilo backpack. And the backpack had two and a half sets of clothes. The half was what doubled for me for a speaking engagement in Porto, which is my happy pants, a singlet, and a linen shirt, which was also my pajamas at the places I stayed.
I love it.
And flip-flops was what I wore on stage. And the next morning off I set from Portugal, and it was the shortest period that you could walk to get your certificate, which is 102 kilometers.
Wow.
To get your passport. And so it took me 5.5 days, and I think I walked 131. If it wasn't for my Fitbit, my kids would never have believed it. But anyway, that was amazing. And I did walk by myself. I left my laptop behind, and I just had my phone and my bum bag and my laptop and my backpack rather. Now, the interesting thing was I had my earbuds and podcasts as we listened to them, but I was 15 minutes into the first podcast and bent down to do my shoelaces up, and my earpod fell out. I never put it back in.
Wow.
I never listened to a podcast the whole 5.5 days. I got caught in torrential rain for 3.5 of those days. And what I realized is that all we need is a phone and a passport. That we don't need anything else if we've got people that we can speak to, if we've got food, and I'm talking food, I'm talking apples off the side of the road, I'm talking grapes, I'm talking I'm just talking the senses, the smells, the people, the laughter, it was just unbelievable. And like I said, the learnings from that, every morning I got up and it was torrential, and they say that the worst thing you can do is get blisters. And so I was conscious of that. And the very first morning, 5:30, I'd start off, it was pitch black, I was by myself, I wasn't scared for some reason, I don't know why, but I'm walking through a forest, and the water, I could feel it starting to trickle down the back of my sock. And I'm thinking, there are no shoe shops out here, I've got really good runners, and then and I'm thinking, what would my dad have done? Because he was one of 13 kids, and I remember Dad saying that they used to put newspaper in their shoes in winter.
Mm.
So I come into this clearing, but before I've come into this clearing, I'm starting to see these big homes, and they've got these long blue plastic bags hanging from their big gates.
Oh.
Bread bags for
Oh.
their long loaves of bread. And so there's this clearing, and it's this tiny little village. And so it's 9 o'clock in the morning now. And so there's this little cafe, and there's these little Spanish men, and they're drinking their tiny little coffee things. So I've gone in there. I've got these blue plastic bags. I've got newspaper. I only had 2 pairs of socks. So I've dried off my feet, put clean socks on, slipped my feet into these blue plastic bags, tied the blue plastic bag around my ankle. And for the next 3 days, in torrential rain, I was known as the blue plastic bag pilgrim. And that is how I walked the rest of the Camino. So what I'm saying there is resourcefulness, not just resilience, but resourcefulness is being able to tap in and think, what can I use that is inside me and just kind of around me?
Right. Note to self, if you go on the Camino, bring extra socks.
Absolutely. But that was amazing because it just shows us, we don't need that much.
And how amazing it must have felt for you to have done this on your own. Just what a amazing acknowledgement of your own power, of your own resilience and resourcefulness. I mean, wow. Like you probably got done and thought, I can do anything.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is the universe, all those years earlier, I'd said to Tim, I said, you know what, I can envisage myself walking into the Cathedral de Santiago on my 60th birthday. I was 2 weeks shy of turning 60 when I walked into that courtyard.
Again, master manifester Bernadette. I mean, once again, manifesting things.
But very quickly, before we finish up, the ziplining was only a month ago.
And fresh.
Yeah, that was that brand new. And seriously, the amount of questions that I asked before they pushed me off was fear shows up in lots of different ways, and someone asking a million questions is a display of fear. What do I do with my legs? Do I hold the GoPro that way? Am I allowed to turn my head? Just go.
Yeah. Just dive in.
It was amazing. Yeah.
I mean, and the Camino Solo is just like such a cool example of what a badass you are. But then also the ziplining from Zambia to Zimbabwe, not many people are saying, gosh, I was able to, that's just not a sentence most people get to say. Like,
No,
wow.
Right, exactly.
And when you started and when you ended, you talked about the fear. When you started, obviously you must have been overcome quickly with fear, but then when you ended, did you feel the same type of accomplishment or pride as you did when you finished the Camino? That's really interesting. I'd like to know.
Oh, yes. Oh, interesting. Very interesting question, because when I ran into that courtyard in the rain, finishing the Camino, I just thought, where I've done it, where's I need a drink. That was a celebrating drink. Like, not I need one, but just I've done it with drink. And I sat with that thought afterwards, and I thought, that's really interesting, because I didn't take in the actual woohoo, I've done it. And I thought about that, and I thought, it's not the finish, it's actually the journey. And you hear that cliche, and when I reflect on the Camino, I don't even think about that ending. I think about the 5.5 days of the journey, the blisters, the wind, the rain, the tears, that's what I think about, the people. It's not the woohoo, and with the zip lining, I mean, it was just over in like seconds, but I may as well be a tour guide because I've got this GoPro and oh my God, I'm over the Zambezi. Look at this. This is amazing. And the seconds earlier, I'm like,
Right. Don't let me
so
go.
that's a journey as well.
Okay, well, we're very close to ending, but I have a couple more questions for you. And I'm excited to ask you this too, because I think just from all the amazing things that you've been able to do in your life and all of the folks and knowledge that you've been able to gather their wisdom along with your own. What's something that you know now at this stage of life that you wish you understood earlier?
That at the end of the day, the the one opinion that really matters is your own. Yeah.
I love that. I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, you get so when you're younger, you
Yeah.
get so caught up in what everybody else thinks.
Exactly. And I think that that is for me is listening to our intuition. It's such a powerful resource that we have. And we think, well, I'm speaking for myself here. I have thought I've never given it the value that it deserves over the years.
Okay. Young ladies out there, do you hear this? Are you hearing this?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so on It's Not That Serious, that you have been highlighted as one of our whips, one of our women in power. And if you're new to It's Not That Serious, you can go to our website and you can look through the Women in Power series where there are many amazing women highlighted and their stories, something about their story that taught them a hard time in their life or something that taught them a valuable lesson. So in our series, the WHIP series, again, stands for Women in Power. And obviously that can mean many things to many people. But when you hear that phrase, what does being a WHIP actually mean to you today?
A woman in power. A whip means that we have the power of choice, and all of us have that, and we can use that choice for the greater good. And I think being a whip is, for me anyway, is the responsibility to pass on to the younger ones or even the older ones the fact that the power is in here.
I love that. I love that. And I love hearing, everybody's got a different version of what does it mean to be a woman empowered, to be a whip. So I love that. And thank you so much for being on the show. I am so excited for your new book to come out. It's always a joy to talk to you. There's always some insight that I've gained after we've chatted, and you're just so refreshing and so fun, and gosh dang it, you're so fearless. I love it so much. It's so fun. So thank you for being fearless and coming on this show. And I hope I hope the book is a smashing success. I can't wait to listen to the podcast. Everybody, that wants to hear more about what Bernadette's doing, she's got the podcast coming out. So again, we'll put all of that in the show notes so everybody can find you easily and the books you've recommended. But again, just thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Talk to you later, guys. See ya. That's a wrap on today's episode of Carrie, It's Not That Serious. If this conversation resonated, subscribe and share it with a whip, a woman in power in your life. You can find more conversations, more community, and all the fun INTS merch you love at itsnotthatserious.com. We're building something meaningful here, and I'm so glad you're a part of it. Until next time, remember, it's not that serious.